Hey everyone, welcome to Cinematography Ask Me Anything. I'm Adam Welch, cinematographer, filmmaker, and visual storyteller. Every week we're going to dive into the craft of filmmaking, lighting, lenses, storytelling, editing, and everything in between. This is all about sharing ideas, answering your questions, and helping you level up your visuals no matter what camera setup you're using. So grab a coffee, drop a question in the chat, and let's talk cinematography. Let's dive in. We're kind of like looking at some lighting today, just some past lighting stuff. Right here, I have a interview I did when I was working at Iowa PBS for the documentary about the state fair. You know, most of the lighting they wanted pretty much the same. I would not probably not light a lot of stuff exactly the same way if it was going to be my personal kind of story or anything like that. I would definitely have more shadows on the camera side. Um, a little bit more. I mean, I like the dimension here compared to some of the stuff we did, but I would have liked to have a little bit more dimension. Um, Hey Chase, how are you doing today? I'm just kind of, I guess, going into a some past lighting stuff just to kind of try out some streaming here. You know, see where it goes. Maybe have a little bit every week, talk about different things. But hopefully, you're doing well. But like I was saying, I would have had a little bit more dimension to this setup, a little bit more negative fill on the camera side. But we are also using a lot of natural light in here. Because we have some like if you look at my diagram off to the side over here, we actually have quite a few windows going on. Let me scoot that over there. But we have some windows off to the side over here where we're getting a lot of our light. But a lot of times I end up supplementing natural light with some kind of light to help me control the situation. Besides, maybe closing these off a little bit and then supplementing it. I always blast my light through some kind of diffusion. I either do a book light or I will use a grid cloth of some kind. Um, like I was saying, I don't know if I would have filled in the shadow the same way if I had 100% control. Uh, Most PBS programming, they like their lighting a certain way. They don't want it to be too moody. So you do have to fill in the shadows a little bit more than you might for something moody. So that's why we have the Astra bicolor over here going through diffusion. Like I said, even if it's a soft light, like I have the light panels 2x1 Gemini, I still put that through some kind of diffusion. I don't know. It's just adding that. It's just softening things up a little bit more. I always like doing. But like, let's see here. Yeah, that's grid cloth. I mean, you see, like it looks like they're in frames. I generally don't have time to put things in frame because a lot of times I'm doing things solo. So a lot of times, what I end up doing is I will take a C stand, put out the arm. I usually keep my diffusion on its roll. I will roll it out, take a couple A clamps, clamp it at the top so it doesn't roll off anymore, and then I do a couple on the bottom to keep it hanging down flat. It's kind of a quick way to do it, especially since a lot of times I can't carry full frames because they don't fit in the vehicle. I do need to end up getting Matthew's Road Rag kit, their large 4x4 kit, because right now I don't have any floppies that I can usually take with me if I'm not working with a crew of any kind. And so I have to, a lot of times find ways to be compact, and that's why, like I said, I have to use my roll the way I use it when doing a big diffusion source. Over here, I did not do the same thing. In this case, what I would have is a small 4x4 square, not 4x4, but like a 2x2 square that I would wrap around the light to diffuse it. Back here, of course, you see I have light panels LED brick for the hair light. Well, of course, he doesn't have hair in this, this case, but you know, just a little bit of dimension, guys, hitting the shoulder there. I don't really like that white point, but there's not a whole heck of a lot I could completely do since he's bald. I mean, like, I always joke when I'm sitting in, when we're, for setting up lights or showing people how a setup is, I'm probably not the best option because I don't generally have much hair and I end up being pretty shiny myself. But most of my interviews for PBS, would have this similar kind of setup. Would use the LED brick because I would have the egg crate on the front. I could really control it. Nice harder light. To give a nice edge here on the back, and it was compact. I could stick it anywhere, and of course the Astras were always the main lights I would always use because each kit that we had those. Even now I use the Astras a lot, like 'cause I have a set of Astras myself, but a lot of times for my key I am generally using my 2x1 Gemini just because it's nice and powerful. I'm kind of like my personal kind of lighting items is pretty small because like I said, I have the 2x1 light panels Gemini. I have two 6x Astras, and then I have three sets of actually I have four sets of Fresnels if you count the 2K I have. But a lot of times, you don't need to go overboard. Like I was working actually on a video today about negative fill, and a lot of times what it boils down to is actually not always adding more light, but subtracting it. Blocking stuff out. Adding that shape to your subject, and you don't always need to have but much lights. Like in this case, like I could have probably easily pulled him closer to the windows and used a lot of that light instead of throwing an Astra in there. Only problem would have been is then the background would have been boring because I'm pretty sure back over in this area there wasn't really anything too interesting over there. It was rather boring. So you like dimension, you like having things in the background, and we wanted to have that table back there. Of course, we weren't too really interested in seeing what was exactly on the table. So we didn't want to hit it with any additional light, highlight anything. It's all natural light that's pretty much getting, except maybe some a little bit from the key as well, which is probably why you got a little bit of a glare on this item up here is coming from the key. But we didn't want to highlight that. That's why. But going back to how I would have lit this differently if I had full control, I would have had this have more of a shadow on this side. It has a nice shadow, but a little bit, I would have shaped it a little bit more to try to get him to pop a little bit more off of the background. Maybe even going and blacking out this window to bring down the brightness on the desk back here, just so it didn't pop as much. But you live and learn. Every situation is different, and you got to be flexible. And the big thing that I came away from a event I went to recently is don't put your heart like onto attached to whatever you're working on, because if you don't end up liking it, or somebody else doesn't end up liking it, you start taking things too personally. It's like, yes, you do your best in the situation you have, but don't take any kind of negativity completely to heart. Use everything as a learning experience. Grow and move on to the next project and try your best again. It's all, every scenario has its issues or shortcomings, and you're trying to make the best image possible with the resources you have, the time you have, and the environment you're in. And in those cases, a lot of times you can run into problems, and you flex as needed. And like I said, a lot of times I'm doing a lot of stuff solo. Luckily, lately, I've been able to have the opportunity to work with a bunch of people on things. Working with the crew, I love working with a crew because I feel I get it. It ends up being more expensive, but time is money. Also, you end up being more time effective with a crew. You can do a heck of a lot more with a crew. You can make everything look and sound so much better with a crew. I get these companies want to try to cut corners, but when you start cutting corners, you lose something. I always think about, like, the pyramid, where you have, time, money, and quality. And when you start trying to, shift things around where you want, you know, to spend less money, well, you're starting to move away from quality. You want to spend less time on it. Well, you're also moving away from quality unless you start putting more money into it. It's a balance. But like I said, you know, been lucky lately to have worked with crews on last few projects. Even the last thing I did last week, there was at least two of us, which you're able to collaborate more. You're able to throw ideas off. Trying to work through problems. Like, we had one problem where we're stuck in this itty bitty office trying to light it, and they wanted everything to look moody. They wanted it to look moody, and it was a white room, and so it was a little tricky. We had aperture 300 for the key, and they were so close to the wall. Was able to squeeze a floppy in there, shape it around their head and stuff like that. But it was a tight fit. But the thing is, while yes, you could achieve that by yourself, it takes more time, and there's that collaborative element where you're able to bounce ideas off of each other and work through the problem. If you do it by yourself, you might not come to that conclusion. You might not be able to fix that, problem, or that, come up with a solution. But when you work with somebody, you're able to collaborate and figure things out. That's like it. Collaboration is so important in this field. It's like the biggest, biggest element that I enjoy about it, because you're just, community, working with people. I enjoy it. That's While I can do a lot of things solo, I prefer not to if the budget allows it. I mean, even if I'm able to just get a gaffer and a sound guy at a minimum, I mean, that makes such a big difference. Such a big difference. Then you start, adding even, you had a focus puller on there. Now you got even more flexibility. It's like, you want super cinematic images. Well, guess what? We're going to need to spend a little bit more money on the project so we have the people we need. Because yes, I can do beautiful images like this by myself, but you start getting, it's going to take me, a bit of time to set up this by myself, because not only do I have to set up the lighting, I got to set up the audio, got to set up the camera. So it's going to take me more time. I'm going to need more time versus if you got a crew, you can, bop in there, get things set up and go. I mean, I would always tell them I would at least need an hour of setup time. So that doesn't count, like, loading in and stuff like that. An hour of setup time to be able to get everything to look nice. Otherwise, we're going to rush it and we're not going to get a nice image. I mean, luckily for a lot of the documentaries we worked on, they would definitely give us the time, and they started getting really good at doing that for a lot of the series as well. But I would have loved to have a crew, especially, if you have to end up starting getting B-roll for stuff and moving pretty quickly. You need people to pull lights around. You need someone to help pull focus for you. You need somebody to be getting the audio for you. It would have been great. But luckily, I mean, a lot of this documentary also ended up being archival stuff. I did shoot some stuff, some slider stuff, some detail shots for them to add in here, but it wasn't too bad. Now you get into something more like this for a short film. more shape and more shadow going on. But I'm still filling in this um, in the shadow a little bit in this case. The difference being is you have a super white room with a lot bouncing off of it. Um, while this room does have some light colored walls, you have a dark ceiling. Behind us, the walls weren't as bright. Just things covering the walls, actually, preventing much light from bouncing around. So, like in this case, I don't have a lighting diagram for this, but on this side, we have an Astra 6 by being filling in the shadow. It's actually, if you look here, it's doing a nice little bit, adding a little twinkle in the eye there. But then outside the window, I am actually using a 600 RE Fresnel blasting in there. It does have a gel on it to be more daylight, but it's just blasting in there, kind of giving a nice strong edge there to supplement the daylight coming through there. I ended up blocking out all the other light in that area. I pretty much was able to use it for the wide as well. It's actually highlighting the skull here. Let's actually remove these from there so you can see the whole thing. But it's actually kind of highlighting the skull. But this was me and another guy pretty much set this up, blocking out all the windows. We are kind of controlling the some of the spill in from that light over there, or from the window, shaping it so that it's not. We were trying to basically narrow it in so it's not blasting all over the place. But I would say this scene was pretty much one of my favorite setups, just because we end up spending more. Like, I love lighting. I absolutely love any opportunity I get to light anything, and we spend more time. We would spend a little bit more time in here, just putting the 600 outside the window with the gel, blocking out the rest of the windows in that space, and setting up an Astra on the inside to help fill in a little bit. I wish we would have been able to spend the same amount of time setting up the rest of this. Like in this shot here, the lighting, it's using the same 600 to help key her face, but the problem I have with it is it's too much. There's no definition here. I feel like she starts basically blending into the background, which is not what I really like. I'm not entirely sure what I would have done differently, because the problem is you have this garage door right here. There's no other things blocking stuff off. Maybe I could have squeaked in the flag right over here to try to shape it a little bit more. But yeah, it's just too flat for my liking. Because especially because she's talking to this guy. She's talking to this guy, and you go from this shot to this. It's just I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Not entirely sure what would have been the best approach. Like I said, maybe I would have been able to bring a flag over here. I mean, it's too late now, but that would have maybe been able to knock some of that down. I can't remember because if I still was using the Astra over in this area or not either. I wouldn't think I was, since that would have just blasted her in the face with light. It just, I like this shot. But then you just keep going back to this, and it's like, it doesn't, because you have like a lot of dark elements. And I think some of it's probably also set design, because it's like you got too much, white back here. You got the garage door, even though it's like, yeah, you're coming into the garage and stuff. I just think I would have done this slightly differently. But I'm not entirely sure what it would have been the best option. But live and learn. This, I was with another one I kind of tweaked around with for a while, trying to add texture to this boring wall. Oops, I'm gonna take a quick drink here. But what we got going on here is once again we're using a Fresnel. I always put Fresnels on a dimmer just so I can control how much the intensity is, if I need the full thing or if I need only part of it. But we're pushing it through these rails here to add some texture to the wall, just so it's not just a big blank wall back over here. I also like how, as she's coming up, it hits her face that way. I like that. The only bad thing is when you start getting up here, you'll completely lose it. This has nothing. I don't know if I like. What I really needed is I needed the light to be almost even lower than it was to try to blast up this way to get the rails to cover maybe the whole wall, so that it adds would add some more light to this side. But it stays pretty like. And then in this spot right here was tricky because I was not sure how to exactly. There was no, I didn't have anything to bounce, to drop down in here to get her face. Like what I really needed is some kind of um, tube, or the problem is like I needed like a spreader. I needed a spreader to put up there and try to hit a little bit of her face on, potentially this side. The thing was is like I did not want to illuminate the whole area down there, because then you start losing this nice texture on both sides. And this, I also did not necessarily like how this turned out. Um, like I feel like I needed to hide something right over here to try to hit the face a little bit. But you're dealing with all these walls that are a white and cream color, and just not hitting it the way I want, because everything is just bouncing all over the place. It's like what I was talking about earlier is sometimes it boils down to control of light, negative fill, that kind of thing. And I just was not able to control the light the way I wanted to. Part of it being because I did not have all the resources I need, like enough flags, enough floppies to really shape the light. This, I don't necessarily completely mind how he looks here. What bothers me the most is over here. This is once again like probably one of those scenarios where I needed to hang something from. I needed a spreader. I feel like I've ran into so many scenarios where I could have used a spreader to hang stuff, because like you get stuck in a situation where you can't have any C stands, you can't hang anything up, but you need to put a source somewhere. The other, actually, probably thinking about it now, the almost the better, except it's not bright outside. What I probably could have done though is there's a window right over here. I could have probably put some light through that window, not had that over there, had that just be a dark void, and that might have added more shape to his face. But it's one of those things, like in hindsight, you look back and you like, yes, I would have done this a little bit differently, and whatnot. But now this surprisingly turned out nicely, even though the area is white. I think I just had him positioned right in the right spot. It's like I don't have a flag on this side, but there's an Astra hitting his face on this side. And I like how it's I know I like it. I think it turned out, pretty decent for me, not doing a whole bunch. Decent shape to his face. Um, I don't know about like necessarily this side if I needed to hit Nate a little bit more to so he didn't completely blend in back there. But limited space, white walls, you're just dealing with things bouncing all over the place. But like, I mean, then my problem was like I'm in this tight space and I have to get like super up in his business. Where's that other shot that I wanted to show? So here, what I like about this is we're using his phone to illuminate that. But the rest of this bathroom is being lit by an Aperture MC Pro. I basically put it up, like, you can't really see it, but it's right up. Oops. Where the lights would normally be, because there's lights above the sink, but I did not like how those lights looked. So ultimately, what we're doing, we put the Aperture MC Pro up where the lights are, so I can adjust the color and the intensity exactly the way I wanted to illuminate the bathroom. I think it does a decent job. And then you have the phone basically kind of illuminating his face. I think it kind of gives the feel I wanted to some degree, but it's like, you're constantly dealing with all this white that you could wish you could, shape some of this a little bit more, make it a little bit more, dark. Dark. It almost be nice if I could have flagged some of this off over here. Maybe what I needed is to put the grid onto the aperture to kind of shape it a little bit more. But I don't know. It's always me going back and looking over the stuff I've done in the past, and like how could I have done this differently? And I think one thing I got to do differently is not tear myself up about it. Don't you shouldn't be tearing yourself up about what you did in the past. It's everything's always constantly learning. But I think I need to always look over a thing and like, okay, in scenarios like this, what could I have done? Okay, with these kind of resources, what could I have done? I think that helps you grow, not taking it as a negative reflection of your abilities, but just always about improving. What can I do to change? What could I have done to make this look better? Next time for the next project, because I'm always out there doing some kind of project, but you don't always have time to completely sit down and do a post-mortem on every single project. But I do like to go back through and like, okay, what can I do to improve? Because I want to get better. I enjoy cinematography. I enjoy lighting. I enjoy being behind the camera, and I just want to continue to grow. This shot, I feel like I struggled with this space so much. I'm trying to put him in a position of power. We had there's this window that's so freaking annoying in this shot. Oh, where is it? It's right over here. We're trying to shoot it for nighttime. So it's like I have this window blacked out all, with flags and all kinds of stuff, which gives, some dimension to him here. But it's just, I don't know if it's the set decoration. It's white. It's like, I was talking about collaboration earlier. It's a team effort. It's a team game. And it's that other aspect. Like, okay, I can go in here and light this. But now the set just does not feel right. Like I feel like I don't know. It's like one from a lighting perspective, I don't like this. I don't like this on the door. Of course, you got these cream colored walls. Like I don't know. It's like, do I add more texture to it? Um, I like these candles, but the problem is like I almost needed this to be bigger or more over this way, more towards me. Like I feel like it needs to fill up this side of the screen because I feel like one, he's too small. Like I feel like I need him to be, a bigger presence, and I need this over. And maybe it needed to be, more of a medium shot than what I had. Had. I mean, it's almost medium. It's a little wider than a medium, but like I feel like these candles could have been over here more, maybe up more. This shot needs more set decoration. I need to, flag off the light over here. I don't like it hitting the door because I need like he's just blending in with the background way too much. I mean, he's wearing a tan outfit, the wall, a tan-ish color. It's just not enough separation for me. And maybe what could have been done is cheated the whole thing and pulled him, farther away from the wall, had me go farther back to try to have greater fall offs, to have a little bit more separation. I am not entirely sure what would have been, the best option there. But if anybody has any questions about, the things I'm showing or cinematography in general, the kind of stuff I do, my career, where I've come from, where I'm going, feel free to drop that into the chat. I mean, that's pretty much, what the whole live stream is about. Of course, I'm just focusing on past stuff, but it's all about asking questions, sharing ideas, helping each other out, to grow as, visual storytellers and how we all can improve. It's like, I will not, I don't know if I will ever call myself an expert. A professional, yes, I will call myself a professional, when it comes to this kind of work, but not an expert because there's always things to learn, always new things, always new techniques, just experience, they're just, it's constantly growing. So that's why I don't like to, would never coin myself as an expert. I'm a professional. I think this shot suffers from the same thing the other one. It's like we're trying to fit them into this area. I just don't. Here's the other problem. The problem I already mentioned is we're trying to shoot, a day for night kind of thing. I don't have enough duvetine flags, floppies to block off the windows that are over here. So it's like I'm trying to cram them all into this little space and have it feel like it's nighttime. And while I think we kind of pull it off, except for maybe a little bit off to the side over here, like it limited my ability to do so much from the composition to the lighting. Just not exactly how I wanted it to be, but we do have a few gems in here when it comes to what I feel. But live and learn. You move on to the next project, where we have outro here, which I shot with local talent Mike Pace. Kind of a reflection on his life. We all have our journeys and stuff, and there's detours. That's never a straight path. But this space was interesting because the whole room is already is dark because it's a sound room. So you have now why am I drawing blank? Sound geez, I can't. You have the soundproofing stuff on the walls, and it's all black. So that's already, taking away a lot of light, so you don't have a lot of bouncing going on. Of course, this is behind him, but it's more like almost adding a little bit of edge right there behind him. So what we basically have is I have the 2x1 light panel Gemini as the key here. It's blasting through. We got a little bit from an Astra coming in to slightly fill in the shadow because the room is so dark. It did need to fill in the shadow a little bit just to bring out some details and stuff here. But I wanted this kind of moody feeling. I wanted the whole atmosphere to be moody between him and his alter ego. So the moodiness maintains between them. But then what we do with his, let's see, where's the tight? There we go. Then what we do with him, since the idea here was, since the alter ego is an internal reflection, kind of his shadow, I did not want, normally you would probably want this to be the shadow, but I wanted him to be in the shadow, since he is the shadow, he is the reflection. So I ultimately wanted, I probably could have used a little bit of an eye light to kind of maybe make his eyes pop, but ultimately I wanted him to be a shadowy figure. I didn't want him to be fully visible because he's not supposed to technically be actually there. He's a figment of the main character's imagination. He's an internal reflection of, his internal dialogue with himself. So I wanted him to be, dark and shadowy. He's getting that light from the Gemini 2x1, highlight him here, get his shoulder a little bit, but ultimately I wanted him to be shadowy. Now, maybe I could have, like, especially for the tight, hit a little bit into this area so that, he popped over here, or maybe even brought a little bit of an edge light over here to try to get him to separate from the wall a little bit more. But I still think, I like how this scene overall turned out between, the tights and the wides. But so ultimately, what it's supposed to be is that, his whole internal dialogue is moody, and shadowy, and kind of more, if you notice, it's more blue. And then we start moving into things being a little bit warmer, because he's starting to, just be who he wants to be, do what he wants to be. He's kind of resolved some of that internal conflict. And this, I think we had moved the light panel Astra a little bit too far, like direct in there. But the problem is like, I was a little bit limited into where we could put stuff because he has some windows in front of him, because these basically are studio spaces that you could look into. Because like I could almost have used some negative on this side, give him a little bit more depth, a little bit more dimension. This one, we got a little bit. I mean, most of this is actually using the natural light. I got a little bit of a Astra hitting here to a little, hit this side a little bit, but most of the light in this area is from the windows and the natural light. And then, of course, like one of my favorite shots, like it was actually ended up being our pickup shot. Well, actually, let's look at this first. This I would have done completely different. I don't like how I lit this at all. A light needed to come from a different direction than I put it. Like, I don't know if it needed to come, from back here hitting up against the wall, or from maybe it might have actually been best if it came from on this side instead. But once again, it was one of those, I had a bunch of light coming in from behind, like from behind me, where I am. And I tried to black that off. I didn't have enough material to black it off. So I ended up just kind of supplementing, which ends up making everything look kind of flat. Not not ideal for sure. It's just, I mean, but then you're once again you're dealing with all these walls bouncing light all over the place anyway. That's why I always think what you need, you almost need more than lights, is black material, be it floppies, flags, duvetine, bed sheets, whatever. You almost need more of the black material than in some cases the light, because you end up getting this scenario like this, where you got light sources all over the place, from the sun to your own lights, and you need to control it. You need to focus it where you want it to be, but you don't have enough of that that material to do some negative fill to shape the light the way you want it to. So then you end up with a flat image like this. Now this I liked our little pickup right here. Um, Basically one light for the setup. I have the light panel Gemini 2x1 coming in, hitting them on this side. Of course, it's darker on this side because the light's actually out this way somewhere. But it looks to me, it all looks rather natural. That's what I wanted to go for. But if you notice in comparison, like, this is much warmer than how things ultimately started. Because the idea was everything's kind of cool, colored, dark, dreary, and as things as it progresses, it gets more warm and stuff like that. Especially here towards at the end, it just more vibrant because he's come to terms with his life journey, his life path, and now he gets to spend the time doing the things he enjoys, with his wife, and moving into retirement and doing the things he wants to do in retirement. But that's pretty much, I mean, quick kind of lowdown on a couple films and an interview setup. I mean, if anybody has any questions, please let me know. But ultimately, the goal is to do this hopefully weekly, where I hop on, we can talk about a few things, for a little bit, go over some past projects. I want to have a theme for the week, a theme to focus on, you know, maybe go through some editing and stuff like that as well. But this being the first kind of stream of this new series that I want to do, I just kind of threw the thing together to see how it went, and here we are. I'd like to do have more lighting diagrams, walk through that, because lighting is my favorite aspect of this whole thing, and so that's kind of what I want to showcase, is lighting stuff. We'll definitely talk about other things, especially since I do a lot of one man band stuff. But yeah, I mean, if there's no questions, I think we might end the stream here at 45 minutes. Definitely we'll probably have a variety of lengths depending on the subject matter. I will try to build up more material to go over, for future streams, because I trying to build the channel, try to build people that connect with, to talk about stuff. We can learn from each other, because at the end of the day, this is a collaborative field. There shouldn't be any gatekeeping. There shouldn't be any holding back of information. We should all work together and grow as storytellers. That's basically it's a form of this is a form of communication. It's almost in my opinion, one of the highest forms of communication, because you bring many different arts together to create these things. It's not just lighting. It's not just set design or sound design or hair design, makeup, costume. There's so many different elements that come together for filmmaking, and to me, it's the highest form of art, and it's a collaborative art form. But I will see everyone next time, and Hopefully, you have a good rest of your week, and let's grow as visual storytellers together.